I don't go around thinking about my title on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's definitely something that I'm still navigating through, kind of figuring out like the right level of support to my team, to my peers, to the org, and adjusting to that role.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a free resource for women who work in the sports and entertainment industry. Each week, we get real and talk about the things that hold us back and how we can overcome them and keep climbing to the top. And the top is however you define it. We talk about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Consider this podcast your secret weapon. You will learn from the best in the business and be able to take immediate action with all the advice that you hear. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake, a leadership development coach and consultant. I've worked in sports for 20 years. 15 of those years were spent working for the Red Sox, Dodgers, and the Cubs. After 15 years of working in the front office, I took a leap of faith and I started my own business. Friends, as a Black woman in sports, I know that the industry can take a toll on your confidence and sometimes leave you feeling defeated. Join me each week so I can support you on your journey. I promise you, each week you will feel stronger and more confident than the week before. So let's get started with this week's episode. Our next guest has always worked for iconic brands, including Walt Disney World, the Chicago Cubs, and now she is making her debut as of 6 months ago as an executive for the Phoenix Suns. Vanessa Ward is the Vice President of Event Services for the Suns, and she dives in and doesn't hold back and talks all about her journey. She talks about how she managed the guilt she was feeling when looking for a new job while with the Cubs. She talks about how she had to be persistent in advocating for herself to advance in her career for close to a year. She talks about why it's important to build and then share your own story when you're trying to get to the next level. She also talks about how she approached the first few months of her job as an executive with the Suns. All right, Game of Her Own listeners, let's do this. Vanessa, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I've been looking forward to this. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've been listening to episodes for quite some time now, and it's really an honor to be on one.
Thank you. All right. So let's get started and go back in time and tell everybody when you first fell in love with sports.
I think one of my first big sports memories is the women's gymnastics team in Atlanta in 1996. So the Carrie Strug and Dominique Moceanu, that team. So I have a pretty vivid memory of being really into that team. And I think I had their commemorative magazine and all of the fun stuff with that. But I've always been around sports. I played, softball when I was little. I did basketball and dancing for a while. My brothers were always in sports. So it's certainly always been a part of my life growing up.
Love it. Tell everybody what you do now and who you do it for.
I'm currently the Vice President of Event Services for the Phoenix Suns Mercury and Footprint Center.
Fantastic. It's a big job. And how long have you been there?
Just right over 6 months. So halfway through a year. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Why don't you tell everybody, when did we meet? Was it before? It was at your last role. So why don't you tell everybody where you were before?
Yeah. So prior to joining the Suns, I was with the Chicago Cubs for a little over 6 years. I started as an assistant director of guest services and then grew that role and oversaw guest services and the employee experience, and then did a little detour into HR and some kind of project management stuff on the people side for about 7 months or so before deciding to take a big move and come down here to Phoenix.
And you took a big move before the Cubs, correct?
Yes.
Let's just go down your journey. Yeah. Where were you before the Cubs?
Yeah. So before the Cubs, I was at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. I went to the University of Kentucky and graduated, and had always wanted to do the Disney College program, but never wanted to give up a whole semester of school. I was really involved in activities and just loved being on campus. So I decided to go do that after graduation. And thought this would be, 6 months, you go down, do a program, they give you housing. So it's pretty low commitment and kind of a way to transition into the working world. Like many people, ended up staying after that and moved into hotel management. So as a front desk manager for several years and kind of bounced around to various hotels, and then got into some project management, guest experience work. So that's really my background, is all kind of guest services and hospitality. I never set out to work in sports. It just happened that I was looking to move to Chicago to be with my now husband and saw the job posting on LinkedIn for the Cubs and thought like it was a good mix of kind of my project management and my operational knowledge from Disney. And I really admired the Cubs brand. So leaving Disney, it was important to me to work for a brand that I had a connection with and knew that was important to people. So I set out to work for the Cubs. They tried to warn me what I was getting into, but but I charged ahead, and here I still am.
So when you say warn you what you were getting into, for those who are listening and looking to get into sports, but are, have a lot of professional expertise under their belt, right? So they've been working for a while, like you were at Disney. What did that mean, warn you?
Well, in baseball, there are a lot of home games, 81 to be exact, plus potential postseason. And then most venues now are hosting concerts and other events. So they're very upfront about the work schedule. Can you handle 81 games? It's a lot. At Disney, I had worked a variety of hours and shifts. So I felt like that was comparable and I could translate. But I certainly think until you're in sports, nothing prepares you for just the cadence and how fast things are moving, and the fact that you still have to do a lot of work even when the team is not playing. So it's not that you're working 81 games and having time off when the team's on the road. You're working that whole time too. So I think that's just certainly something until you live it, it's a little hard to understand.
So what was it like changing industries?
So completely different work environments. Disney is a huge corporation. There's like 70,000 people, I think, that work just in Orlando. Very established, large corporate culture. So kind of all of those things. And then moving to the Cubs, which is essentially a small to medium family run business with a huge brand reach. So there's just a lot of differences on the day-to-day side. I would say on the guest service side, which is what people usually ask me about, that's pretty similar. Like guest service, if you are comfortable in that realm. And I would imagine the same thing, whether you're sales or marketing, like when you understand your specific roles and tasks, like those translate across all industries. It's learning to navigate the different work environments and who does what and what processes are or aren't in place. I came from Disney, which is super structured, to the Cubs, which were definitely building structure, but did not have a lot in place. We were definitely learning while building there. So just two definitely different and unique experiences.
Talk about the interview process, and really any interview process, right? Because you worked more than just the Cubs, but what was it like? Were you nervous? Like, how did you approach it? I mean, you were moving there. Yeah. And at the time, you didn't have your son, correct?
No, did not.
Okay.
Yeah. We were not married yet when we moved, married the following year. Yeah, the interview process at the Cubs was intimidating. They flew me up there several times. To get to the interview process, I always like to share that I used LinkedIn heavily to try to reach people at the Cubs. So I did some great LinkedIn digging and found that someone who also went to the University of Kentucky worked for the Cubs. We did not know each other, but we were certainly in the same like major social circles, had friends in common. So I messaged him on LinkedIn and asked if he could put in a good word as a fellow Kentucky alum, and he did. So that helped to get the foot in the door.
That's incredible. Wait, so many people are afraid to do that. Like they're hesitant. Was there any, were you hesitant at all? Or did you see it and you're like, I'm jumping on this immediately?
No, I don't think I was hesitant. I mean, worst case, they just don't answer, right?
Yes, that's what I always say. I'm like, so they don't answer. I guarantee you it's not the first time they've heard from somebody applying for a job. It's not going to impact you negatively. It's not like you're like, this person connected me on LinkedIn. Do not hire them. Like that doesn't happen. Right?
No. And we got to work together for the last 6 years, worked closely together. So I think it was like, we've probably maybe met at some point. We have similar classes in past. So like, if you can put in a good word, I felt comfortable reaching out. And then the interview process, I did some phone interviews, went in person, then didn't hear anything for a long time. And I was probably like stalking the HR team because I was, doing the check-in like once a week, like, hey, do you need anything from me? How's the process? Eventually went back up there and did, I think it was second interviews with some of the like key leaders there. And I think what helped me in that process is really just trying to, the self-pep talk and being like, you're here for a reason. Like you have this experience. They're talking to you because they wanted you to come back for another interview. So definitely had to do some self-coaching, I guess, on that front. and got the interview. And then it's always interesting once you join a team to then get the like backstory on your interview and why it took so long and who was doing what in the process.
Yeah.
And then in my interview process for the Suns, I had been searching for a job for a while. I kind of knew I was ready for a change at the Cubs. And we had talked about that too. So I appreciate your help there. And so I had interviewed and kind of each time gotten a little further in the process, which was frustrating, but also like, okay, I must be on the right path because each time getting like one step closer to the role.
Yeah. So when you say interviewing, you mean interviewing at other places or
other places? Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Other places. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So a few different opportunities had come up over like that kind of year that I was searching for vice president roles. And each time I'd gotten a little bit further in the process, which was frustrating, but also gave me the confidence to keep going. And I was fortunate to get some good candid feedback from another team that I had interviewed with. And that one was more informal as kind of the start of their process. But one of their leaders gave me some feedback just on how I came across, sharing my ideas, being more open, some of those things. So that really helped. And I felt like by the time I got around to the Suns opportunity that I was extra prepared and ready to go and knew what to come in with, what the like energy and attitude to bring. So really, even though that was, obviously hard at the time to hear some negative feedback, that really, I think, helped a few months later when this role came up.
I feel like getting the feedback, like really actionable feedback that you can take and make some changes, it's unheard of. A lot of people like are afraid to say anything because of HR reasons, like you're not allowed to, and this and that, you know what I mean? Like you don't want to get sued and all this stuff. So did you actively seek out that feedback?
Yeah, because since it was not like a formal, it was kind of the beginning of the process, so it wasn't formal, and we had talked and kind of gone back and forth. And then I did ask like for specific feedback. But as you said, not everyone gives that. So I feel like this woman in particular, gave more than I was expecting, which was great. And down to things like you crossed your arms when you sat in the office with us, and that made you seem closed off, which wouldn't have occurred to me, right? It's just like, oh, I just kind of am sitting like this to sit formally, but that's how they read it. So it was some really helpful, specific feedback. Honestly, I owe her a thank you note still. That's been on my to-do list for a while to kind of reconnect and say thank you for helping me and being honest. But yeah, I think the interview process everywhere can be daunting, but you kind of have to keep charging along. For the Suns, I interviewed solely over Zoom because it was moving really quickly. So I did accept the job before coming down in person, which I hadn't planned on doing, but just the way the timing worked out, thankfully it worked out.
Yeah, it's definitely a way of the times. Like it's just how it goes now, right? Like it's not unusual not to meet somebody in person. Obviously, 2019 and before, like that would have been different. Yeah. But now it seems very common. Like, oh yeah, I haven't met them in person yet. I'm on my way. Yeah. Had you been to Arizona or Phoenix?
I hadn't been to Phoenix downtown. I had been to Arizona for spring training. So I was vague familiarity with like the area and kind of some of that the Cubs being down here for spring training was a bonus, so I had some familiarity. I knew a few people that worked there, so yeah,
that's good. So you talked about the self-coaching, the self-pep talk, and the self-coaching, you called it, during the interview process. What made you have to like sort of do that?
I think I originally like started thinking of it when I read the book Lean In. I know people have like mixed feelings about that, but that was really an eye-opener for me, was reading that book. And as I read it, I started to realize like, oh, I do a lot of these things that are holding me back at work unintentionally, whether that's, not taking the actual seat at the table or not sharing ideas in meetings, some of those things where I wouldn't say I'm super shy, but was probably more reserved in like professional settings. I like to listen and learn before speaking out, but started to realize some of those things. And then I think I read that not too long, I think, before interviewing with the Cubs, and then kind of just had that mantra of like, if I'm going to interview for this, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to give it my best shot. And I wouldn't be here if they didn't like my experience or our initial interviews. So like, I'm here for a reason.
I love this self-coaching. Like sometimes we just have to give ourselves like, hey, I'm good at what I do. It's good to get it from like your network and your support system. Like that's great to have that. But sometimes it just got to come from within. Like you truly have to believe you're good, and you just have to like sit down and do some reflection and really think about like, I'm good. I'm ready for this role. I can do this. Let's just go. Like I have those conversations with myself very, very often, where I just give myself a pep talk and I'm like, all right, that was good. Like I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay. This comes up a lot. I'm really excited for your response to this. Was there a feeling of guilt when you were looking for your next roles in any, like from Disney to Cubs to the Suns?
From the Cubs to looking for new roles, certainly. And I would say even to this day, I have little pangs of like missing my team or wishing I was there to help or some of those things. But it was also, I knew at like the end of 2020, I think I just had this gut feeling like I needed a change. I needed a new start. And then what helped me was actually, I think, our conversation and then networking with other people and hearing they've had those same feelings and had similar experiences, because you can really convince yourself that you're wrong, like you're wrong for wanting more, or like you do have it pretty good somewhere. So I really struggled with that kind of inner battle of like, there might be something else out there, but I'm not really happy, but I should be happy, all those kind of things. And it wasn't certainly not one thing in particular at the Cubs. I love the people and the organization. It was just time for something new for me. I was in a unique position where after I decided to move out of operations into HR and kind of, I worked part-time as a project manager for them, that I was open about my job search, which most people don't have the luxury of. So they knew it was like, I'm going to go part-time. I'm still would like to contribute here while I figure out what's next for me and my family. And so that was actually a relief to be able to share interviews or ask for networking connections. But when I finally got the job, it was still really hard to tell people, even though I had been planning for that for quite a while. It's always hard to make that break when a lot of your life is tied up in work and in sports. I think a lot of our identities with our team and our brand and what we do. But when I got here, I also felt like this role was meant for me. You know, I was meant to be here. They needed me, and that's a good feeling as well. So I know it all worked out the way it was supposed to, but it's definitely hard at the time.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. There's so many women who I talked to that I've had the honor of supporting and coaching. And there's a lot of guilt that goes along with looking for their next move when it's outside of the organization. It's really difficult to manage. And I have some clients who are like, don't think twice about it, but others, like, when it weighs on them, like when they bring it up, it's something that is really, truly weighing on them. So I think that the advice you shared is super helpful, and perfect example, relying on your network and talking to other people and realizing that like you're not alone. We all have those feelings. It's okay. Yeah. What's not okay is to stay put because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings.
Yeah.
That would be regret for sure.
Definitely.
Some of the toughest conversations we have are the ones that we have with ourselves. We can convince ourselves to believe stories that we don't even know are true. What's crazy is we allow that story to take a toll on our confidence. Have you been there before? I know that I have. We get in our heads. We beat ourselves up. Here's some tough love. Nobody's got time for that. We are high achieving women who have big career goals. We don't have time to get in our own way. And I am here to support you with my new one-on-one coaching program, Step Into Your Power and Own Your Career. My clients have told me that when we work together, I've helped them get out of their own way, regain their confidence, learn how to manage their emotion and mindset. They've told me that they've been able to get their voice back and use it with confidence. The most important thing, they've told me that we've identified the obstacle that was getting in their way. If you want to learn more about this program, scroll down in the show notes, click on the link that says Step Into Your Power and Own Your Career. You can set up time to chat with me and we can figure out if this is the right program for what you need. All right, let's get back to the episode. Now, were you nervous at all when you're taking your first leap into being an executive, into a vice president role?
Yes, and I probably still am nervous some days. Like it's navigating. My role also didn't exist before, so it was kind of a double whammy there of like, here's this new person in an executive role. Like, what do I do? Like, what do people come to me for? figuring out the right balance of my existing team and what they had done. So like what they want me involved in versus what they want to handle. And I think even just the getting used to sometimes how people react to you with a different title, like some of the game day staff, I felt like were unsure of me at first, or like, oh, like, sorry, like you're the new vice president. Like, I don't want to do this or whatever. And it's like, no, it's really fine. Like, it's just me. I don't go around thinking about my title on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's definitely something that I'm still navigating through, kind of figuring out like the right level of support to my team, to my peers, to the org, and adjusting to that role.
I love that. Like you're still thinking about it. Like you're not going in with all the answers. Like every team is unique. You can't like read a book and be like, okay, I know exactly how to be an executive and what I'm going to do. And here, I'm checking these 5 boxes and I'm good. What I'm hearing you say, it really has to do with the organization and the people that you're working with, or the people who are working, for you directly. Did I get that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're leading a new team. So any new executives out there who are listening and are like dreading that, like, right? Because you inherit your team essentially when you're going into a new organization or an established organization, I should say. So you're inheriting a team. And so what advice would you give about just effectively leading a team? Like day one, you get in there, like what advice would you give?
I did a lot of like meeting, greeting, and team lunches. Food goes a long way, I feel like. Also, one of my earlier acts was to order new swag for the team. People love swag in sports, as you know. So some new Suns branded gear.
That goes a long way.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. I think one thing I would do differently is like, so I joined 5 or so weeks before the season started. So I like really got in the operation and the weeds pretty fast, and then had to a few months later kind of come up and breathe for air and say, okay, like, I haven't really met people outside my team yet, or like who are my peers that I need to build relationships with. But I really wanted to just get in there and learn all I could before the season. So I think the basics are regular one-on-one meetings and team meetings and shadowing when you can. So I oversee traffic support, guest services, and security. Sometimes certain areas need more help or attention than others. And then one team's going to get less visibility to me, or I'm going to be a little less hands-on. But I feel like leaning on the directors to help with that messaging, or ask, who needs some support, which team members are maybe feeling a little left out or need some attention, trying to work on that. And then I also try to do one-on-ones a couple of times a year with my direct reports. So 2 levels down, try to meet with them to just get a little bit of time with them, get them up to a different floor of the office, see how they're feeling. And a lot of times they have great ideas they're willing to share. So I always take notes and try to follow up on if they have little things that would make their jobs easier that we can do. So I think those are some of the tactics, but I'm certainly, I think, still navigating that as well, because it's a really big team. There's a lot of full-time staff across those 3 departments, and finding the right balance of being there for them, but empowering them is always an ongoing thing.
I love the opportunity. Like I'm thinking back, if I was in like a manager level and have the and say I was reporting to a director, to have the opportunity to meet with the vice president, like at least once a month. I mean, once a quarter would be exciting. So once a month, that's really, I love how hands-on that is. And I'm sure that it's well received on the other end as well.
Yeah. It's not always once a month, but I usually am talking to them in some form or fashion. And I think I benefited from some great leaders at the Cubs. One who was really good, my most recent leader, was really good about doing one-on-ones with all his different levels of direct reports. And then prior to him joining at the Cubs, when we went through a leadership change, my peer and I were allowed to report up to a VP. So we were assistant directors reporting to a VP kind of in that absence. And I think that helped with like growth and empowerment, and kind of having to take on stuff when your leader isn't there, that set me up for success in the future.
Were you an assistant director the entire time at the Cubs?
No, the first few years, and then was director.
Talk a little bit, if you're willing to share, and obviously if not, please tell me to stop being nosy, but like advocating for yourself to become assistant director to a director. Will you tell me? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
What was that journey like?
It was a long time of conversations, I will say. Was hired as assistant director, very excited. It was a good step up for me coming from Disney. Was in that role and just oversaw guest services for the first 1.5 years or so, 2 years. And at that time, I actually didn't even have a full-time direct report. There was like part-time team members that helped guest services.
Yeah.
But I wasn't managing anyone directly. And so then over that next year or so, we started to build out our team. I hired a coordinator, started making the case for like a scheduling coordinator that would end up reporting to me. So started to gather some more direct reports. And then my leader at the time, who was previously your leader, left for another opportunity with a different sports team. And that put a lot on to my plate and my peer Morgan, who's still there. But that was a really good opportunity that they let us kind of step up and take on that extra work until a new VP, they ended up filling it with a VP until he was brought in. So I think my kind of journey to director was one, like building out the team and managing some people and leading more than just the event staff, and then taking on that work and showing that I could do work at a higher level and was taking on more scope than was my original job. But I think it honestly was still like a year of conversations to like actually get to that promotion.
Yeah.
Just the way the promotion cycle fell there, kind of building the case for my scope. And those are hard conversations, I think, especially when my leader was so nice. So it was hard to sometimes bring like, it wasn't critical feedback, but it was like, hey, this is an issue for me kind of, or where are we at on this? Like that's hard to bring, especially if you have a good relationship or, there's someone really kind and easy to talk to and you don't want to add more to their plate. But it was some different conversations, I think, over the year of like, hey, when do we think this is coming? Like, here's my team and here's my scope now versus what I had done. I think even in one of my notebooks, I had like charted it out of like, this is what I started with and how many team members we had. And like, here's how our events have increased. Here's how my team has increased. I never like presented that, but I had that in my head of kind of the story of where it was going. And then, it helped that it was like our team overall had grown a lot. So it was pretty visible that like the 5 people in event operations were now like 12. But yeah, I think that was advocating for myself slowly, I think over the years. And then at some point in there, I helped my younger sister negotiate a salary raise when she took a new job. And I had never successfully done that for myself. So it was just kind of like a light bulb moment of like, she's 6 years younger, like this is her second job. And she went in there and asked and got a salary bump and like, you've never done that for yourself. So I did do that later on. It's just something you're always kind of have to work on, I would say.
All right. So I'm hearing first you added more. There's a lot here and I'm loving it. So you added a lot more to your plate. Your manager at the time left. So there was an opportunity to just take more, which I think is really common for all of us to say, like raise our hands, be like, I want that. Like I see the opportunity. I want it. Give me more. And then it sounded like you took that on, showed that you could do it. Then did you start the conversation or were you kind of like parallel pathing the two?
Yeah, I think then the conversation started, and candidly at the time I was under the impression it was going to happen sooner than it did, that the promotion would happen. But it was also a new leader coming in, so that I was reporting to. So kind of working with him, letting him get it up and running, working through the timing. Honestly, it took longer than I would have liked, but the day-to-day job doesn't change just based on your title. I was still doing my same job and being able to take on new things and new scope while still kind of building the story or how I wanted to kind of tell my journey while justifying that promotion.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's what you were writing down. It was music to my ears. You were like, I was writing down the new things I was doing and just like, here's where I started and here's what I'm doing. And that's such an easy picture for a leader to see, like, oh, okay, this is just not, you know what I mean? Like just not a conversation. When you put that in writing and are able to tell that story and articulate it so well, it helps move things along. Now, I will say, I always personally found that baseball moved a lot slower. I've only worked in baseball full time, so I don't know other leagues, but I just feel like for my clients, I feel like a lot of teams move slower, but it does, it takes a while. And what I'm hearing you say is it took, almost a year, but you were persistent, even though you sometimes felt guilty, like bringing it up again, or felt some sort of like, I don't want to bother you, but what's going on? Like, like you didn't stop and like your persistence helped you get that promotion. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Into like the note taking or like the story, I think now on the other side where people are coming to me, or even in my previous role, the Cubs, where people are coming to me asking about promotions or raises or things, like really having the why and the backing behind it will make it so much easier for your leader, because I don't have the time to go out and build your story, but some of my directors here are really good about advocating for their team. And if they come to me with like, here's the why, here's how this job scope changed, I've compared rates to what other people are making in the area, like that's a lot easier sell to run up the chain than just, hey, somebody asked for a promotion or a raise. Certainly encourage anyone, even if the notes are for you and you never formally present them, to kind of have that ready, so when the time comes you can share it.
Yeah, I'm all about the tracking, because when you look back, like when you finally do go to present, sometimes it's hard to remember. It's really difficult to remember all of the things that you did well and all of the things that you improved upon, right? So sometimes you get feedback like, okay, yeah, I see you wanting to have that promotion, but you need to work on X, Y, and Z. And then just tracking all of those things so you can say, look at the difference like that I made. Because sometimes your manager just doesn't, how do I say this? I'm just gonna say, just doesn't have time to know all the things that you do. Like, it's not their job. Like you said, it's you have to build your story and tell it.
Yeah.
It's important, because I mean, from where I sit, I always was like, I don't remember everything I do. I definitely don't remember everything my team does. I just know you're really good. So. And I would not, I would never, like, if you left, I'd be devastated because you're so good. But sometimes if I have to go in a room and like put that story together in a room that you're not in, it's really difficult. But if you were constantly reminding me in a gentle way, right? Like if you're constantly telling the story of the work that you're doing, especially if we meet weekly, there's so much value in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you said that your directors know to come to you, or and they will tell a good story, so you have something to work with, and it helps when you start to advocate for them to your leaders, and you know exactly what to say.
Yeah.
All right, are you ready for rapid fire questions?
Oh, sure. No, I'm an avid listener, so I've mentally prepared for this.
I know. I was thinking the other day, I was like, I probably should change some of these up, but I like them. All right. What is your favorite sports moment?
Chris Bryant throws the ball to Anthony Rizzo for the final out of the 2016 World Series, and the Cubs win.
Wait, were you there at that time?
I was there, yeah. It started in 2016, so we were at the game in Cleveland in person.
What a great year to start.
Yes, yeah.
Wow. Clearly, you are their good luck charm. I don't know if they know that. What is something people always get wrong about you?
I think that people think I'm more reserved than I am. And I've worked on that over the years, but I think it's just, I can be a little quieter, kind of listen and observe and kind of get to know people before I join in, but I'm fairly outgoing at work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. That was a hard pill to swallow sometimes, and people took it the wrong way, like made up their own, observation. I was like, wait, no, I'm really good at what I do. I'm listening. I want, like, I don't talk just to talk and state the obvious, but man, I tell you, the longer I worked, the more I was like, I guess I have to. Like, if I don't, then, especially being a business owner, I was like, now I have to talk about myself all the time. Like, I'm the queen of advocating for myself, because it's so quick, Yeah. All right. I'm really bad at rapid fire. What is one food you wouldn't want to give up?
Probably pasta, different types of pasta. Yeah.
That sounds really good right now. Are you a morning or a night person?
Not really either. I'm probably more in between.
That's really funny.
With the basketball schedule, there's some late nights, and then I have a little guy, so he's not big on sleeping in. So kind of just adjust and sleep where I can.
Yeah. That's I never thought about that. Yeah, they don't care that you just had a game. Like, no, not at all. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Dog or cat person?
Dog.
What product would you seriously stockpile if you found out they weren't going to sell it anymore?
Chapstick. I always need chapstick, and every bag I own, pant pockets, all the places, always need chapstick.
Do you remember the brand Soft Lips?
Yeah.
I just found it the other day at like a Target or something when I was checking out, and I was like, it was like nostalgia. I was like, I need this immediately. Like, it was the best chapstick I remember when I was growing up. All right, getting off track. What is your favorite app?
I'm probably on Instagram the most.
All right. Who is your biggest inspiration in life?
Right now, I would say it's my son, Charlie. He's almost 3 in a few more weeks. And I think just seeing things through the eyes of a child again and how mundane things can be so exciting and fun and fresh has changed my mindset. And then, I want to be an inspiration to him as a working, I don't love the term working mom, but a mom who works, I guess,
Yeah.
or a woman, a female executive in sports. So yeah, I think he's my motivation and inspiration these days.
Aw. And speaking of children, as a child, what did you wish to become when you grew up?
I think at one point was a ballerina, which I feel like is a common theme that I've heard people bring up on here. So it must have been our age group back in the day.
Yep.
And then a teacher for a while. I thought it'd be a teacher.
No, all right. Last question. Finish this sentence. The future of women working in sports is
Limitless.
Yes. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, how can they go about doing that?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, although been a little less attentive lately. And also I'm fine with emails. It's vward@suns.com. May take me a little while to get back to you as we wrap up the season and prepare for hopeful playoffs here.
Yes.
But I really love networking and appreciate connecting with women in sports. So happy to talk to anyone who wants to reach out.
That is fantastic. And I will be rooting for you all. I used to be a Suns fan when I was younger, so I will be rooting for you all in the playoffs like always.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was great.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram @Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.